Wonderful. So, first off, can everybody hear me? Okay, fantastic. And we'll be talking a bit today about, of course, what it means to be a cybersecurity leader. But we'll also be talking about the CISO role and the evolution of the CISO role, particularly over the past 5 to 7 years, and what that means for success today, and particularly in the short term and the immediate future. But before we get started, I would like to know who is in the room. So I would like to know right now, who is a CISO in the room? Okay, fantastic. Okay, who's a first-time CISO? Okay, fantastic. Who is in the early stage of their career? Who is like a student or in their kind of first 8 years? Okay, fantastic. Okay. Who is in the mid part of their career? Like 8 to 15? Okay. 8 to 16, okay. And who is, would be maybe a senior, experienced senior leader, so 16, 18 plus years? Okay, all right. Oh, this is a pretty spread out room. Okay, fantastic. So, so we'll go ahead and we'll get started. And I do just want to share a disclaimer that nothing that I'm saying today is part of the view of RSA and or any of the organizations that I work with. It is publicly known that I am the vCISO for WESIS, Women in Cybersecurity. Nonetheless, everything I'm saying today is part of my own thinking and thought process. So as we begin today, we will spend some time focusing on what it means to be fearless. And I thought this was an important topic because when we talk about being in cybersecurity, us as leaders, the challenge of the industry, a lot of the stress and pressure that one may feel in many of the roles in cybersecurity, not only the CISO role, but what does it mean to be fearless and move forward despite that? We'll talk about the different types of CISO roles now. We'll talk about what it means to be a cybersecurity leader today. And then, of course, we will talk about the CISO role. And we'll talk about 7 elements of success for the CISO role. And with that being said, before we go on, I would love to know, and so this is Q&A, so I would love to hear from you. What would be something that you would love to hear about today? Like, what would be important for you? Like, what is the reason you came here today? Someone wants to just share. Getting buy-in from executive management. Okay, all right, great, thank you. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. Yes.
What does the CISO want to see on their dashboard?
Oh, what does the CISO want to see on their dashboard? Okay, thank you. Okay. Yes. What else?
Survival skills.
Survival skills. Okay, great. This is great. This is great, and this is all really, really important because this is going to lead into the next area. What else? What keeps CISOs up at night? Yeah, absolutely. Okay, yes?
The emerging role of the fractional or virtual CISO.
Yep, emerging role of the fractional virtual. Absolutely. Thank you. Yeah.
What's a roadmap from early career to eventually CISO?
Okay, roadmap from early career to CISO or virtual CISO. Yes. Anything else? Anything burning before we move on? Yes.
Conflict with CIOs.
Conflict with CIOs. Okay, fantastic. You are in the right place. What I will say, what we will not talk about today is this: we're going to be talking about what it means to be a CISO, what it means to be a cybersecurity leader and then transition into the CISO role. What we won't talk about, and then of course be successful as a CISO. What we will not talk about are a lot of the kind of more of the technical challenges that CISOs have. So we will not cover like ransomware challenges. We aren't going to cover metrics challenges. We're not going to cover third-party vendor risk or regulation. We're not going to cover those type of concerns and issues. It really is about what it means and the resilience within our own selves to be able to do a lot of what you said, right? Handle conflict with the CIO. What does it mean to be successful, to transitioning into the CISO role, staying in the CISO role, and a lot of the other things that many people brought up today. Okay, so I just want to set and manage those expectations up front. And just a little bit about myself is I've been with my business, PurePoint International, for a decade now. We celebrated a decade last year. And I started off in the corporate world. I spent nearly 10 years there working in security. By the time I left, I was leading and supporting a $600 million business. So I was eventually the security leader for that business. And when I left and started doing more consulting and started looking at a lot of other things that I wanted to do, clearly one of the things that was just right there in my face, also because I started off as a computer science major in college, was the CISO role. And for me, and thinking about what it meant to move from thinking and having the mindset of, for me, of like a CSO to a CISO, for me was very natural, and it felt that way. And so since that time, I've worked with a number of different companies of all sizes, from pre-revenue startups to companies that are 3.5 billion in revenue, to organizations that are small consulting companies, to highly regulated companies that are in the insurance and healthcare industry. And I find that, you know, whether I'm working in an organization as a CISO or whether I'm now I also do some advising, so advising to IT companies, advising to general counsels, advising also to other CISOs, I find that there are certain things that continue to be consistent, and that's what we'll talk about today. So when we talk about being a cybersecurity leader today, a lot of that is about like really being an expert in something, right? Particularly for those that are starting off in your career. You're coming out of college, or maybe you haven't been to college. Maybe you have some other experience. Maybe you've been in the military, and maybe you have had an apprenticeship, and you're now starting and you're coming out into the workforce. And so you're specializing probably in something, or at least you're starting to. You maybe have some sort of particular experience that you have where you're really focusing on, maybe you're really interested in pen testing, or maybe you're really interested in being an analyst. And so you're starting to really understand what it means to be great in that. And other areas you may be focused on being more technical. You may be building out software as part of the SDLC. Maybe you're more strategic in focus, and perhaps you're more tactical in focus. And for a lot of particularly people that are in the more early stage of their career, they're probably in many cases going to have more of a tactical role. And there are other areas on here. I think all areas on here are important areas to highlight, particularly the last three at the bottom. Thinking critically, because all of these things are important and I think help to set people up for success in thinking about a CISO role, but particularly also in thinking about what it means to think critically, also ability to work well with others, and also lead with inclusion. So what would anyone else add to this list? Yes? Excellent soft skills, that's right. Yeah. Right. And so, yes. Communication, that's right. Absolutely. Business acumen, that's right. Collaboration, absolutely. Continuing education, absolutely. And everything that you just said are absolutely, I would say, essential for success as a CISO. Okay? And we'll talk a bit more about that. One of the things that I want to also just add, going back to this page, and I've talked to some people about it here over the past few days, but it was probably back in 2015 when I started to look at the work that we were doing and really wanted to think about how do we do this differently. And particularly it was about the CISO role, and particularly the virtual CISO role. And so when I have a small team of people that I work with, and when we started doing this in 2015 in New York City, really no one was doing this role, right? So I was in the process of talking with people, like on the business side, about what was a vCISO, and because many people didn't even know what a CISO was, right, in 2015 on the business side. And then, particularly when we're talking about kind of this range of smaller to medium-sized businesses. But even on the security side, I mean, MSSPs were so big, that was the focus. So really the question was also, well, why would a vCISO role need to exist, right? We can understand a CISO role in a Fortune 500, Fortune 1000 company, but why, or 2000, but why would a vCISO role need to exist? So there was so much really educating on both sides, on both the security teams sides and at conferences, and also as well on the business side. And it was funny, so that was happening in 2015, 2016, 2017, and then we got to 2018. I felt like I looked up and it was like, all of a sudden everyone was offering the service. Like EY was offering the service, I saw IT companies offering the service. And so it was an interesting time, but one of the things that also happened was that not everything was created equal, right? The virtual CISO service or fractional CISO service also wasn't created equal. So for the person who asked about that today or mentioned that today, we'll talk a bit more about that. And also, so a lot of the work that I do is really about creating excellence in that area, so that not only other practitioners are feeling confident and really leading and supporting with what people need, but as well as the people that need that service are really receiving what they need. So we'll go ahead and start to move in to what it means to move forward into that CISO role. And being fearless, right? Being fearless. And I've had a lot of conversations this week with people, concerns about being in the CISO role, concerns about wanting to take on the CISO role. I think there's an element of truth in some cases, right? That there's this kind of low-grade anxiety if you're a CISO. Like, it's just kind of there. And the way that we can best manage that is through managing ourselves. And so we'll talk about that, because that's a reality of the role. When we think about being fearless, I'll share with you what comes to mind for me, but I would love to know what comes to mind for you. For me, being fearless means believing in yourself no matter what. Feeling that fear, but being able to have enough confidence in yourself to know that you can move forward and make a decision in something, right? Believing in yourself. If you've gotten to the point where you're, even 4 years into your career, you've got some good experience there. You want to be able to kind of tune into what feels really good when making an important decision or making a quick decision. And that's absolutely essential for a CISO as they continue to move on in their career. The next thing is even if you have confidence in yourself, it's knowing that, yeah, we're not going to have the answer to everything, but it is truly believing and knowing that I can find the answer to anything. I'm resourceful enough to find the answer. I have peers all across the world that I can reach out to, right? Someone's willing to have a conversation. Someone's willing to talk. Someone's willing to share something. We don't always have to know everything, but if we're willing to find out, then we're like all the way there. So those are two really, really important things about what I have learned and what have come up for me in thinking about being fearless as a cybersecurity leader and moving into the CISO role. What comes up for you in thinking about being fearless?
Bring about change without being afraid of pushback.
Yeah, bringing about change without being afraid of pushback. Yeah, because it's real. Loneliness is real. And I'll talk about that. I had a conversation at another talk about some CISO bringing that up. So yes, thank you for bringing that up. Yes. Yes, being confident. Yeah, absolutely. Being confident. Being vulnerable, absolutely. So important. Again, we don't have to know everything. We have a team in many cases, not in all cases, but we have a team. We have people that have different expertise and skill sets. Really wanting to rely and connect with others is absolutely critical and important to do that. Yes? Speaking truth to power, yes, we'll talk about that. We'll talk about that. There is a certain level of resilience that absolutely has to be there when taking on the CISO role. There is no doubt about that, and so we'll talk a bit more about that. And as you're transitioning, for those that are interested in transitioning from a cybersecurity leader role into a CISO role, an important thing to remember, a Marshall Goldsmith book, if anyone remembers, what got you here won't get you there. A lot of the skill sets that maybe perhaps made you successful or made you great at being very technical or tactical in your role maybe being really excellent as kind of that individual contributor in your role is not always going to be the thing that makes you successful in that next role as a CISO. Okay, so that's also important to think about as well. So as we start to think about the different types of roles, there's in-house, right? So that employee that is a W-2 working for an organization, we see this in a lot of the larger organizations, right? People that are there, they're working full-time for the organization, really carrying that mission forward. So we also have the vCISO role. And so the virtual CISO role is the role where we are outside of the company, I would say not a W-2. And I'm going to give you my definitions for the difference between virtual and fractional, because I feel like they're actually used interchangeably. And even when I first started years ago, I used the term outsourced. So I think I just want to make sure that I share that I do see a difference between virtual and fractional. Virtual, you're there, you're committed to an organization in building out that cybersecurity program to its fullest. You're focusing, you have a clear cybersecurity framework, you're focusing on all different aspects of that business. You're just doing it virtually, okay? And you're probably on contract, you're not a W-2. And then I would say as fractional, is you're there and you're handling very specific and very important elements of the cybersecurity program. You may not be tasked or asked to do everything. Part of that can be because they may not have the resources for that. It may just be that they don't have the need or the risk for it. But you're there and you're to handle very specific needs for the organization. And so now we'll get into the 7 elements of success of a CISO. So the first one, what type of safety person are you? So who knows where this image is from? That's right, Mission Impossible. That's right, Rogue Nation. Okay, and if you remember the movie, you probably remember this scene, right? Okay.
I am a massive fan of the Bourne movies. I think we all are. I just absolutely love those movies. It's really nice because I enjoyed them all so much, and now my son is an age where he and I we're rewatching them together, and he's seen them for the first time, and he's absolutely hooked.
That's great.
And so we're watching it, and the action is so amazing. And then I read somewhere that you're afraid of heights, and I thought that's not possible because I've seen you do too many cool stunts where it looked like you couldn't possibly be afraid of heights.
Yeah, I didn't know that I was afraid of heights till, I mean, I did these stunts. Like, I jumped off a bridge in the second Bourne movie, and I was fine. I was wearing a cable. I had a cable and a harness, and there was a big crane I was attached to. I was like, this is fine, and I did it. And but I was in Dubai in 2004 and went to the top of this building with my wife and on this helicopter pad and walked out, and it was one of those, I went full lizard brain, and I realized, oh my God.
You mean you just froze?
I completely froze. It was like I couldn't physically move. It was crazy. And,
right.
And subsequent to that, I haven't done anything really that involved heights. But I had dinner with Tom Cruise, like, years ago, after he did that thing out of the building.
Yes.
Remember that in Mission Impossible?
He's done so many insane
Well, he hung off
stunts.
a plane.
He hung off a plane, and he's running down buildings. Like, it's absolutely incredible.
That one. So I saw that one, and I happened to have dinner with him. Emily Blunt was making a movie with him, a really good movie called Edge of Tomorrow that they did years ago, and I was in London, and we all had dinner together, and so I kind of cornered him, and I said, hey, tell me about this. Like, I'm afraid of heights. How did you do this thing? And he goes, oh, and you've met Tom.
Yes,
I mean, he's very, like, you're the only person in the world.
Everything else, he looks you right in the eye.
But it's not even that everything else disappears for him. Everything else disappears for you. Like, it's just everything else went away, and suddenly I was
That's
like...
That's called falling in love.
It could be. It could be. It could be.
But I know exactly what you're talking about, yeah.
But he just laser locked, and he was like, because he really wanted to talk about it. He said, I've been dreaming of this shot for 15 years, of this sequence, and finally I had a chance to do it. And I goes, well, so how did it come to pass? And he goes, okay. So I go to the safety guy. I tell him this is what I'm going to do. This is what I'm going to explain the whole gag to him.
Right.
The safety guy says, you can't do that. He goes, that's too dangerous. And I'm like, and he goes, so I get another safety guy. That was it.
So
I am
going to the next one. Hold on.
a massive fan.
There we go. So when I saw that, I couldn't stop laughing. And I kept watching that over and over. And I just thought that I couldn't help but think about the seesaw roll when I saw that. So for some that could see that could be like, oh my goodness, right? Like, I'll just get another safety gear right, or I'll just get another seesaw if it's not working. That could maybe feel trickery to someone. But when you think about it, when you think about someone like Tom Cruise, right? When you think about someone who is an actor, and I'm going to use some analogy here from the entertainment industry, in part because one of my first jobs was working at Blockbuster Video, so I'm definitely aging myself here. And I've loved film for a long time, and during that time when I was working there, I was working my way down the American Film Institute's list of the top 100 movies. And so I feel like I have a great appreciation for some of the things that Tom is doing now at this point in his career, Tom Cruise. And so he is, he's an actor, he's a producer, he's also a stuntman. So there are times when you have someone who basically, he's a professional stuntman because he's doing these stunts himself. There are now 2 other Mission Impossible movies that have already been filmed and are coming out, and apparently he's done 2 huge stunts in these that are now the biggest ever done in Hollywood history, and he's done them himself. And so when you have someone like that, right, when you have someone who's doing this type of work and he thinks about he needs a safety person, he's looking for a partner, right? He's not really looking for someone to tell him what he can and can't do. He's looking for a partner to help him execute that, right? So when you think about the CISO role, a lot of times, there are times where we could have a leader like that, right? We could have a leader that is extremely knowledgeable in security. They're looking for a partner. But we also know that not everything is a fit, right? Not everything is gonna be the right fit. And I think when we think about the CISO role, it's so important for us that are in that role, or when we're going into a role, to know what is the right role for us. Because of our skill sets, because of who we are, because of our passions, because of what we've done in the past. Are we a technical leader, and can we be very advantageous in a company that is very technical, that is very engineering focused, and maybe is in a particular industry? Maybe if we have a strong background in healthcare, should we be a CISO in healthcare, or should we move to another industry? All of these things can help determine where and how we become a CISO. And this leads into the second area. Are you the expert, or are you a generalist? So you have someone like Meryl Streep, who's an actress. She's been nominated for an Oscar 21 times, and she's received 3 Oscars. Like, she is deep, she's like a deeply trained actress, right? Like, I think no one here would argue that. So when you think about that and you transition that to a cybersecurity leader, or to a CISO, who is deeply trained in an area, right? There are certain roles that if that person wants to become a CISO, they could probably be very successful. There are other CISO roles where that person may not be very successful. And so it depends on the industry, the size of the business, where in the world they're gonna be, the type of regulations they're gonna be dealing with, and also just what they're passionate about, what they actually want to do. It's probably safe to say that Meryl Streep may not want to be doing producing, directing, writing, all of these other things. Now you take someone like George Clooney, who in some cases many may see as a jack of all trades. He's an actor, he's a producer, he's a writer, he's a director, he's an editor, he's in other things. He's been nominated for 8 Oscars. He's won 2. He's been nominated as Best Actor, and Best Supporting Actor, where he won. He's been nominated for Best Adapted Screenplay, Best Original Screenplay. He's been nominated for Best Director, and he's been in one of his movies, Argo, which was directed by Ben Affleck, won Best Picture. So that's his 2nd Oscar. He produced that. So when you have someone who is able to be nominated for an Oscar in multiple categories, so that's someone who's, I would say, is like a great example of an expert generalist, right? He probably doesn't have that strong acting skill set of a Meryl Streep, but he's an expert generalist that clearly knows how to do his role in his job and contribute. And so when you think about that for the CISO role, think about that for yourself. Are you an expert generalist, or are you deeply trained in an area where you are the expert? Clearly knowing these things about yourself can help you in being successful also as a CISO and where it is you decide to work. Because again, Not just like with Tom Cruise, not Tom Cruise and also the safety people that work with him, not everyone's gonna be a good fit to work with him, where they can be a great fit to work for someone else. But it's the same thing with the CISO roles that we choose to take on and not take on. Here, Viola Davis, actress and producer, deeply in her area. Both of these women are EGOTs. They have received Emmys, Grammys, Oscars, and Tonys. Viola Davis has received a Grammy for narrating her own memoir that came out last year. Whoopi Goldberg gained her Grammy from her comedy album. So having a clear understanding when we think about the CISO role of where our skills and talents lie, there's so much work that we can do in so many places where we can be successful, but knowing ourselves and how we can best fit into an environment to place ourselves in a position to be successful is important to know. And also that there are these intangibles, right? When we think about all the people in this room and all the diversity of talent in this room, and again, where we come from, what our background is and our experience and our skill sets, what we want to do, what we're passionate about. And it is important to be passionate because on those hard days when that low-grade anxiety is like very, very high, and it's not just for that high, it's not high anxiety for a week or for a month, it's like for a year or two because that's what's happening. It's going to be your passion that moves you through that. It's, and your ability to manage yourself. And so when you think about people that are just the essence of who they are, helps to create change. It helps to see people and helps to see how talent can be different in what they're doing, like these two actors have done. Then this is, that too is what I feel like I have seen in the CISO role, particularly when we start to look at the virtual and the fractional roles as well. So just a couple of things to think about as you think about the evolution of how things are transitioning with the CISO role, because there are more companies that are hiring CISOs, and we need more people out there. So it's extremely important that we have them, and that people actually feel comfortable and confident in these roles. So the more people I talk to, there's so much fear, so much fear, and we'll talk more about that and why that's there as well. So, but there are many different types of CISOs. So the question is again, which one are you? And as we go through this, and we've already used some language, I want you to write down 6 words, just 6 words. And it could be 4 to 8 maybe, but 6 is kind of that sweet spot, but 4 to 8 of words that connect to who you are as a person, as a leader, and how you would see yourself as a CISO as we go through the end. And then I have a bit of an assignment for you when we get to the end. So the other thing is seeing the gray. Seeing the gray. What do you think I mean by this? That's right. Like sometimes in a certain role as a cybersecurity leader, we can see things in black and white, but once we get into that CISO role, we're living in the gray. There is so much ambiguity, and our ability to make decisions in an ambiguous situation is really, really important. And also to be able to move quickly when we need to move quickly, and to be able to slow down when we need to slow down. There are times when companies have hired me. It happened not too long ago. So they asked me, it was like week 2 of October. They wanted our team to start. They had a deadline by the end of October. And so, sure, we could come in and we can help with executing a few things. And so there's no doubt. So we could come in and quickly do that. And we can execute that. But so we're going to have to move quickly. But in doing that, there are also some challenges with moving quickly that can make people uncomfortable. Right? And not just on the security team, but that can make the business uncomfortable, but it's what they want, so it's something that we can do. When we talk about also the need to maybe slow down and move slow, to not move so quickly, to really think about, okay, what is really going on here? What are the nuances? What are the different relationships that are going on here? Why has the IT leader here not have spoken to another leader in the organization for a few months? What's going on there? And really needing to be able to go in and resolve that and have some open and honest conversations as well. And so responsibility versus accountability. Let's talk a little bit about what is the biggest challenge of the CISO role. Like for those that, if anyone is willing to be open, that they have fears about, and I feel like a couple have been shared, so whether it's talk with the CIO, challenging conversations with the CIO or any other leader in the organization, what are some concerns that either would want people to leave the CISO role? Because there was a report by Gartner, someone told me this week, as I've been having these conversations with people that stated that 50% of CISOs are going to leave their role by 2025. Like, why do you think that would be? Okay, fear of getting sued? Okay. Like personal suing or? Okay, so they would lose their job? Be financially responsible for loss of data. Okay. Lack of support for the executive team, yeah. Being held accountable for things that they're not responsible for, yeah. Yeah. So having tough conversations and having a lot of clarity and transparency in this role is really important. So when I told you that example of when I was working with an organization and they needed us to move quickly, and so we went in and started to move quickly, one of the things that someone said was, yeah, we can, we don't have a lot of time. We can just, we can just, have something on paper and we can just checkbox it, right? We can just checkbox it and move on. And I just paused right there and I just said to him, well, if we're going to do this, we're going to do it right. And so what that means is we're going to document what's here. And if we can't get everything done, then we won't be able to get everything done, but we'll have clarity into what's here, and that'll be documented. Now, what I heard you say was that you just want to checkbox something. But that's not what I do, and that's not what my team does. So we won't be doing that, and if that's something that's important to you, then we're not the partner for you. And then he said, no, we're gonna do this. We're gonna do this. We're gonna document everything. And so when those type of things happen, and other things, being able to stop when a challenge comes up and address it quickly is really important. Like no matter what, like having the ability to have those, what can be a challenging, or what can feel sometimes like a tough conversation is always so important and critical to do. And I think a lot of that too, when it comes to also thinking about the roles of who we're reporting into, and we'll talk about that in a moment. So a lot of times, and this came up a lot this week, is what's been in the news recently, particularly over the past year. So what's played out at Twitter, what's played out also at Uber, and the different challenges that have come up around the CISO role and what it means to escalate and what it means to be able to have tough conversations and what it means to be able to know that someone won't just, that you won't have a leader that basically does just try to let you go or blame you for something. So what I think is really important when we talk about this, and this is probably going to be a good slide for many of you in here if this is a concern for you. First of all, I want to identify what I mean by responsibility versus accountability. When I talk about responsibility, I'm talking about the responsibility that we have for ourselves, like self-responsibility, that we're holding our own selves accountable. Self-responsibility. Accountability is when there's an outside party holding us accountable. The goal and the vision, I would say, which I think is what I've seen has made people be successful in this role, is when they're so responsible that no one can hold them more accountable than they hold themselves accountable. And so a way to be able to understand what that can look like when you're actually even interviewing for a role is you ask your own interview questions. Have an understanding, what's the reporting structure here? Who am I going to be reporting into? And who else reports into that person? Is it the CIO? Which technical teams report into the CIO? Are you going to be reporting into the CTO? COO? Where could conflicts of interest arise? And then also, if you find that there could be a conflict of interest, are you negotiating who you could report into? It doesn't always have to be permanent. I was working with an organization in insurance. It was in New York City. It was when the New York Department of Financial Services is rolling out the cybersecurity regulation there. So one of the strongest regulations in in the world in regards to cybersecurity, particularly at that time. They needed a CISO that could come in and implement that. And I found out that the role reported into the CIO, who was also the COO. And I told them that I wouldn't do that. Because for them to do what they wanted me to do, which was to move quickly to be able to get a lot of this done, to be able to meet a regulation that was a new regulation. So everyone was still trying to figure this out, right? We were all, like partners and peers in the industry were just trying to really understand exactly what the regulator wanted. And in the end, I was able to negotiate that I reported to the general counsel, because it just seemed to work out that that was going to be the best reporting structure. And so that's what I did. And in the end, it worked out well, because that organization ended up being one of the first organizations during that time when I was there to actually have the regulator come and visit and evaluate the program. And I can tell you now that if I was reporting it to the CIO or the COO, we would not have had the success. And just let you know, the result of that outcome from the regulator was that they had no recommendations back to the business, meaning that they had no feedback to the business on the cybersecurity program. And that never happened. You have to know what you need to do in order to be successful and negotiate that environment so that you can be successful in the environment. Yes?
Could you clarify for some of the younger people why it's not a good idea to report to the CIO, CTO, et cetera?
Okay, why it is or isn't, or why they're... Okay, so yeah, so I know that people have a lot of different thoughts on this, and some people, I think it's fine for a CISO to report into the CIO. There can be a strong conflict of interest when you have the technical team and also the security team that's reporting into the CIO. We see it a lot. It's actually quite common. And it's hard for a CIO to be able to make independent decisions, particularly when when they're also directly tied to that success, right? I mean, it's just inherent. And it's extremely challenging. So ideally, what I have seen is successful, and also what I do is in my team, is we work to not report into where the technical teams report into. We change that. And in this particular case, the example that I provided, it was going to be the general counsel. And it was really, really hard, because the general counsel was like, what? Why would you do this? And I just said, look, I'm gonna do everything I can to help make sure that you understand what I'm doing. I'm going to make sure that that we learn together along the way. And it was very, very, very hard for her. She was an incredibly amazing person, extremely generous, and it was also probably one of the most challenging experiences that I've had too. But when I look back, it was also the most rewarding, because of also the success that came out of it. But that's the kind of thing that you have to be able to do, is be willing to have those hard conversations up front before you even take on a role. And so CRO, Chief Risk Officer, so that can also be an option. So other thing, you want to also know what they're depending on also the type of company. Do they have a board? Is it highly regulated? Is there an expectation that the CISO reports to the board? You're going to want to know what senior management already thinks about that. You don't want to start to go into a company where that's not part of the culture and they're not open to that. I was working with another organization where the CISO wasn't reporting to the board. Their next level leader was reporting to the board. So they were reporting to the board, giving the board report. I think it was the COO. The COO was asked questions by the board in regards to a report that they had provided around challenges regarding the cybersecurity program. The COO was answering those questions, but didn't fully know the answer. But instead of saying, I don't know, I have to get back to you, he answered the question. In the end, it resulted in a huge cybersecurity transformation within the organization that ended up having the security team kind of raise up and kind of have a revolt almost, for lack of a better word, because the expectations that were being asked of them weren't realistic. But there was no one in the boardroom to explain to the board that, yeah, if we're at a maturity level, cybersecurity maturity level, or if we're at a 1.2, you can't maybe just go to a 2.5 in a matter of 12 months. That there needs to be progress, particularly depending on the size of the organization. But if there's no one there to fully explain that, it can be really, really hard. So the importance of being willing and having that resilience to have those conversations is so important. So you're going to want to know during the interview process, what's your team going to look like? What roles exist? What's going well? What's not going well? You're going to want to know what needs exist. What does the budget look like? Do you have the resources you need to be successful? And of course, are there people, if you're building the right case, could you create the case for more resources? Would they be open to that? Board visibility. So maybe there isn't, it maybe, yes? Yeah, I think that can happen, absolutely. Huh? I think it's hard, just for the CEO role specifically, just because it's just even for that role's bandwidth. I think it can be challenging, but also I think just like when you think about the general counsel role, I think unless the CEO has experience in leading that, I think in general it can just be challenging to be able to know how to manage a CISO. Now what we know is that particularly in regulated industries, senior management, particularly the board, has the full responsibility for cybersecurity, which is why we are seeing these indirect reporting roles to the board, which I've also had as well. And those can be very helpful, but it can be very challenging when you don't have a leadership team that is fully, that they have the full knowledge to be able to do this. And so we just don't see it enough. I think a lot of it is because of that. And I think it's a hard case to build for a CEO to want to take that on. I think what you would have is someone who's, in some cases, like extremely committed to it and enthusiastic about cybersecurity, or you're going to have someone who's kind of like a Tom Cruise, where they're kind of already expert and get it, and are like, yeah, let's just do it. That's been my experience. So board visibility, you're going to want to make sure that that's there and that you have that. Having a point of view on partnering with law enforcement. Right? If something happens and you need to partner with law enforcement, and is the general counsel going to be there to say, okay, let's have a conversation about it, or is it automatically going to be a no? These are important things for you to know going in. Also reporting to the regulator. Are you aligned with the leadership team on how you would do that? Now a lot of these things you would work out when you get enrolled, but you at least want to know what they're thinking, what they're feeling. Have they had to do it before? And then creating consistency and thinking about how you escalate concerns in the organization. A huge piece of the CISO's role is escalating concerns upward to senior management and doing that consistently. Not waiting, but doing it consistently and having that courage to do it. And it can be very lonely sometimes, but it's being able to stand within that loneliness, like having that resolve to do that, to be the only voice in the room that's saying something when it's completely lonely and completely hard and completely terrifying, but you're doing it because that is the role. that is the role, and it's hard, but it's so important. So you want to partner with the general counsel. You want to ensure that you're partnering with outside counsel, partnering with other industry partners, people in the field, peers in the industry, depending on the industry that you're in. How are they maybe handling a certain concern? And then also collaborating with other peers, where you can maybe have more of the closed door conversation to find out, hey, this is where I'm having challenges. What do you think, or where have you seen this? So when we talk about some of these concerns that many of you have brought up, in terms of having these conversations, not being in a position where, or limiting positions where people can be blamed for something, or where termination can happen, having a lot of these conversations up front is going to be really important. But part of that also depends on your ability to, my experience in this is to be able to really have that level of self-responsibility as well. And if you find that you're in an environment that isn't a healthy environment, you can always leave. Go to an environment that actually is a healthy environment where you feel that the CISO role can be supported. And so in this area of being the iceberg, so these are the qualities, I think, that help to make a CISO be really, really supported and also successful, right? Resolved, resilient, courageous, responsible, right? Risk tolerant. I think the level of, part of that low-grade anxiety is one's ability to withstand risk and ambiguity, to not have all the answers, but willing to be able to kind of move off their own experience, and to be able to move off of the knowledge of their team and the people that are there that can help them make certain decisions. Being willing to listen is so incredibly important, particularly because the cybersecurity strategy will mirror and help enable the business strategy. So knowing what exactly that we're doing and building out to enable the business. Anticipating those threats and risks and challenges. And then core elements of the role, right? So all of these things. I think one of the most important thing that's on here is we're the advisor to the business. I was in a situation where we had a third-party within the third-party risk management program, there was a vendor that the organization had been working with for years. And they had not been fully vetted in the third-party risk management program. So when they finally went through, they failed. And the recommendation to the business was, look, I know we've been working with them. We're like dependent on this, as a business on this organization in many ways, but they're not secure. And we really have to decide what we're going to do next and if we're going to continue to work with them or not. And so the recommendation was that we don't work with them, but if we do, we have to have a clear plan, right? It needs to go through a risk escalation process. And so it went to the risk committee. And so as the CISO, I was there to advise the committee on what they should do, but it was the business that was actually going to make the decision. But being there to really also always provide that advice. And so I think also it's important to understand the distinction, particularly when it comes to a responsibility and accountability of where that actually lies. There are a lot of decisions that are business decisions, even when it relates to cybersecurity. So we advise the business on what they want to do in many cases, but they are making that decision. And if we're doing our job in advising, then that too can limit that risk when it comes to having fear or concerns around the role. So as an example. But of course, that's also a very gray area when it comes to a lot of things. But really having that clear line is really important between the CISO role and the business and their decisions that they're making. And so being the silent P, and this really is meant to really emphasize the listening. Because in the hard conversations where you're pushing for the budget, we're saying that here are the risks, right? Here are the risks in the business. This is what's needed. And someone is saying no, that they can't provide something, they can't support something. Maybe it's first line of defense. The IT team is saying that something can't be done. Maybe it's we can't find enough money in the budget, or we can't pull, even there is an opportunity to pull from another part of the business to be able to support something in cybersecurity. Sometimes really listening for a while to maybe really find out what is really going on. Is there a bigger concern here? Talking to the team, not just the security team, but talking to senior management, talking to other parts of the business. What is going on? What is something that can be done to really help support and move the cybersecurity strategy forward? And then mastering the fear. And I don't think we ever really master the fear, but we can continue to get better and improve on it. And part of doing that is how we take care of ourselves. And I was asked a question not too long ago, how do you deal with the loneliness in cybersecurity, like as a CISO? He was saying that he was so lonely, and we're in a group just like this, right? And he was vulnerable enough to share this in front of the group. He said, he's lonely. He says he's concerned all the time, that he didn't have a team, so it was just him. He said that he was just not having a good experience at all. He just didn't, he wasn't sure what to do. And I just said, it's so important that we take care of ourselves. Like we have a workout plan, if that's something that we physically can do, that we have things that we're passionate about in our life, that we spend time with family, that we spend time with friends, that we do things that give us energy, that we have a routine around these things. If we'd like to travel, that we travel. If we meditate, that we meditate. That we do these things, and we have a consistency around how we do these things. It is absolutely critical to our success, because if we don't have these things that balance out our own energy and how we show up every day, like if we think about like a mirror, like if we have a mirror that is nice, bright, and shiny in the morning, but it starts to get cloudy at the end of the day. Like part of our role is like, how do we clear off that mirror so that by the end of the day, as much as we possibly can, that we can be clear within our own selves. And we can go home to people that we're going to spend time with and show up well for them. And then be able to come back to the office and be with the team the next day and be relatively clear enough to be able to show up for them. And this is really important because in 2019, there was the study that came out that correlated increased alcohol drinking and medication, self-medicating with the CISO role, that 1 in 5 CISOs were doing that. And then, of course, I mentioned the Gartner study that someone mentioned to me this week, that 50% of CISOs are expected to leave their role in 2025, which it's hard for me to believe, but you can. But I mean, it was a Gartner. They said it was a Gartner report. So, it's one of these things where in my experience, how we manage ourselves is so important, and it doesn't take away from how hard the role is and how challenging the role is. But if we've seen this plethora of roles existing now in the industry, it's just over the past 5 to 7 years, right? We're in 2023, and we really saw the roles really take off from 2015 onward. And we need people that can do this role, that want to do this role, that can be resolved and resilient enough, and that want to do it, that are able to master themselves, right, and how they show up. Because AI may do a lot of things, but AI is not at a point where it can make complex decisions that a CISO makes. So we actually need human beings to be able to do this work. So so we've talked a bit about the top 7 elements of what it means to be successful in this role. So when we talk about the CISO role for tomorrow, I would encourage you to take a picture of this. All right? CISO role is strategic and tactical. They may be highly technical. Being highly technical may not actually be a requirement for success. And they may be knowledgeable in several different security domains and not just an expert in one. And so I would encourage you to think about the type of security person you want to be, taking those 6 words that you wrote down today. What are those 6 words that are going to be that core for you, that resonated with you in terms of who you're going to be as a CISO and as a cybersecurity leader if you're in transitioning into a CISO role or if you're currently a CISO? And then I'll end with this. And I just want to substitute, I love this quote by Michelle Yeoh, and I'll substitute women for CISO. I gravitate towards roles where CISOs find strength in very difficult, uncompromising situations, but maintain clarity of mind, discipline at heart, and a certain strength in spirit. So with that, thank you very much, and thank you for your participation along the way. I really appreciate that, so thank all of you. So thank you so much. And you can contact me on Twitter or LinkedIn.